Hello, Dave here with SparkFun Electronics. Today we're going to be covering how to solder. If you've never soldered before, don't worry, this is the video for you. If you spend any time working with electronics, then soldering you will find is one of the most basic skills that you need. First things first, let's cover the tools. We of course have a soldering iron. This is a fancy HowTo unit. You might have a pencil type iron that has a heating element in the handle. This one has a heating element separate. Either one would work for this tutorial. We have the iron itself, of course. We also have a sponge. In this case we have a brass sponge, but a damp sponge from your kitchen might work just as well. Anything to clean the tip of the iron in between soldering. We also have some helping hands. These are very useful so you can focus on holding the iron and the solder and not worry about parts falling in and out of the board and whatnot. So these are very helpful, not strictly necessary, but they're good to have around. We also need solder. Today we're going to be using the SparkFun lead-free solder, which I think is pretty great. It's also lead-free and we find it pretty easy to work with. And finally, we need something to solder. In your case, it might be a kit or a project you're working on, but today I'm just going to be soldering some headers onto a piece of perf board. So all I've done is mounted the 4 header pins into the perf board, and they're sitting pretty flush along the bottom, and the pins are just sticking out the top, and that's where I'm going to be actually soldering to. Don't forget safety glasses. Soldering is not inherently dangerous, but you are waving around a soldering iron that's several hundred degrees Fahrenheit, so we do want to be safe. And once we start snipping the leads off of things, there are little metal bits that can go flying everywhere, and the last thing you want is one of those sticking in your eye. Let's turn on the soldering iron. I have this one set to a good medium heat. Some solders have a higher and lower melting point. Find one that's good for your solder. If you see smoke coming up, it's too hot, turn it down a little bit. So I'm going to take the solder now. I'm just going to unspool a little bit so I have some room to work with and it's not fighting against me the whole time. So the first thing I'm going to do is just apply a little bit of solder just to the tip of the iron. It's called tinning the iron, and it makes it a little bit easier to solder. So I'm going to apply a little bit of solder onto it and then brush it off in the sponge. Next, I'm going to push the iron onto the joint, and the goal is to heat the pin and the board evenly. I'm going to apply it for about a second and then apply the solder on the opposite side of the joint. So applying the tip and solder onto the joint. I'm going to repeat the same process for the next pin down. I'm going to apply a little bit of solder to the tip, hold it up against the joint, apply the solder to the joint. The perfect solder joint is shaped kind of like a volcano. Not that dissimilar from this. A common mistake is to heat just one or the other, either just the pin or just the board, and this can lead to weird globbing and you start getting these clumps of solder. That's bad. But the goal is to evenly heat both the pin and the pad at the same time and apply the solder evenly to both. I'm going to repeat the process again with these 2 pins at the bottom. Again, I'm going to tin it just a little bit, then apply the solder evenly to both the pin and the pad. So there you have it, it's that simple. If you're just getting started in soldering, I highly recommend one of the kits from SparkFun. We have kits like the Simon kit, which come with a bag of parts, a board, and step-by-step instructions that walk you through the build process. Thank you for watching this instructional video. I hope you found it helpful. Until next time, this is Dave with SparkFun Electronics.